Good evening, good morning from Canada. I'll start sharing my thoughts on spirituality as a path to emotional intelligence. Some years ago, I was invited to a diversity conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a city in America. This was at an all-girls school. And when I walked into the gym, there was many hundred people there, mostly students, some of their teachers, some of their parents, and they had invited some of the surrounding schools. So I'm here for this diversity conference, and I show up into this gym and I'm wearing my dhoti, my kurta, my traditional Indian clothing, and all of a sudden, everyone stopped. And they just watched me. And then I sat down, then they introduced me, and when I came to speak, I'd laughed to everyone, sharing, we're at a diversity conference, but as soon as you saw me, you all stopped, because I looked different. And then I had asked them, I said, how many of you are over 6 feet tall? And some of the boys in the back had their hands up, and they were really happy about this. Then I asked, how many of you are female? How many of you identify as being female? And many more hands were up. Then I had asked, how many of you are humans? And we all had our hands up. I share this personal experience of mine because if you think of outer evolution, the evolution of our hair, the evolution of our teeth, and so on, it is unconscious. In contrast, our inner evolution, that is conscious. My personality type, this is a conscious effort to be like this or to be like that. And so I'm appreciative that there is an organization like United Consciousness. I'm appreciative that there's so many who are enthusiastic about United Consciousness that are joining physically and virtually. My name is Vivek. I'm joining you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I very much wanted to be with you, but I couldn't come on account of family demands. My 4-year-old son Shuka is right beside me right now, so you may hear him. You may see him in the background. And then there was a point where, as a Canadian, procuring a visa to come to India became demanding too. So again, I'm going to share some thoughts on spirituality as a path to emotional intelligence. Spirituality, if you Google this right now, will come up as the science of the spirit. That's fairly obvious. And the spirit is often defined or felt as that which animates. Which is why perhaps alcohol is also called spirit, correct? Because it animates people. They talk louder, they dance faster. In Sanskrit, the word for spirit is Atma. Atma doesn't mean animating. Atma means that which is closest. And so really, another word for spirit is Atma, or center. It is one's center. Now, as we think about spirituality, these are practices. These are disciplines that help to ground us, to balance us, to center us. In Sanskrit, we use words like sadhana. It is the sadhana that leads us to the sadhya. Now, in terms of practices or practices to be spiritual, the most simple, the most universal that I have found is to read, write, and reflect. In my mind, I like to call this vitamin R3. Reading in Sanskrit would be shravana, that which inspires you. Writing in Sanskrit would be manana. It is to clear doubts we have about who we are. And reflecting in Sanskrit would be nididhyasana, or practicing, trying to live what we know to be right. Spirituality is the science of the spirit. The spirit is our center. So practices that center us is spirituality, our spirituality. Now I zoom in more. How does this raise our EQ? How does this affect our emotional intelligence? Our emotions are thoughts. I'm going to share that again. Our emotions, they are thoughts. They're preceded by thoughts. As an example, if you have a stress thought right now, you're going to feel the emotion of stress. But if you don't have that stress thought, you're not going to feel the emotion of stress. Emotions are thoughts. Now, what are thoughts? Thoughts are a flow of the mind. Swami Chinmayananda, the founder of Chinmaya Mission, has shared, the mind is a flow of thoughts. You can look at this the other way. Thoughts are a flow from the mind. So our emotion, the locus of this is the mind. Now zooming into this more, the mind is an equipment. In Hindi, upadhi. It is something I use, it is something I don't use. We're doing this all the time. I hope all of you are still awake. So you're using your mind. But in time, you will all be asleep, and so the mind will be put away. It is an equipment. Like an equipment, I have a pencil with me. This equipment, it becomes dull, it becomes sharp. When we analyze this in this way, we really do start to feel the mind is an equipment. We often hear, the devil is in the details. My wife is an immigration attorney, so for lawyers specifically, it is the details that count. And I can't help but share with all of you. What is the biggest joke ever? And now I can't hear you, but I hope you're putting out some guesses. The biggest joke ever is, I have read the terms and agreements. When you download software on your computer or your phone, nobody reads those terms and agreements, but we click on it, correct? But it's those details that protect those corporations, whether it's Apple, Google, and so on. In my experience as in studying and sharing Advaita Vedanta, or the science of happiness, for almost 20 years, there is divinity in the details. Not the devil in the details, but rather divinity in the details. Which is why I'm using terms like, let's zoom into this more. The spirit is our center. The mind is our equipment. Now, as we reflect more on center, some synonyms that can come with this, synonyms like the ground, synonyms like the locus, synonyms like existence. In Sanskrit, sat, that which is existence, that which is true. When you wake up in the morning, your very first experience is that you exist. Then you exist as, in my case, a male in Toronto whose name is Vivek. that existence precedes all other experiences. And as you go to sleep, all of you who are gathered in Ujjain, the last experience that you will remember, it's not going to be that I want to sleep, it's going to be that I exist, When we know and feel that our first experience is existence, then the mind is treated like an equipment in an objective way, in a scientific way, in a rational way. When we use the mind or we direct the mind, that is called thinking, and there's a feeling of quietude. In contrast, when we don't register, we don't have the practices that I am existent, then we start to feel I am the mind. So then I don't feel the mind is an equipment, I feel I am the mind. Then the mind is using us. The mind is controlling us. This is felt as thoughts or stress. I'm going to put that framework out again. When we direct the mind because we know we're existent, then we think. We feel quiet. When we don't know we're existence, we feel we are only the mind, or we feel we're an equipment, then there are thoughts, and that is stress. Completing my sharing on, spirituality is a path to EQ, or emotional intelligence. The three best gauges of someone who has a high EQ, or emotional intelligence. The first, and this goes from more shallow to more deep. This is sequential. The first is balance. To be balanced with articles like this toy, articles like the pens on your tables, and so on. And Sri Krishna states this overtly in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 6, verse 8. The one who is emotionally intelligent, they are balanced with earth and stone and gold. The second gauge of one who has a high emotional intelligence is focus. And all of us are seeing in society, whether in India or Canada, in Germany or America, that there's a high attrition when it comes to people's EQ being focus. Sri Krishna shares this in Bhagavad Gita's chapter 6, verse 9. To be focused, not with articles, but rather beings. 10 different types of beings are shared in this verse. The one who is focused understands these beings and adapts accordingly. Knows how to hold them, knows how to speak to them, and so on. And the third gauge of one who's knowing their existence, so knows the mind is an equipment, is they are reflective. Balanced, focused, reflective, balanced with articles, focused with beings, reflective with divinity, reflective with the spirit. And Sri Krishna teaches this in Bhagavad Gita's chapter 6, starting in verse 10. Verse after verse, he is teaching how to contemplate. Contemplate not on the mind, but to contemplate on the spirit. Contemplate on shifting from being an equipment to being existence. Spirituality is very much a path to emotional intelligence. I work with many people, types of people. Tomorrow I have a course being released on Udemy on harmony in relationships. And in my experience, if I had two people that I want to serve with, one has a high IQ and another has a high EQ, I most definitely would choose the one with a high EQ. I meet lots of young people who have high IQs but low EQs. They don't know how to use that IQ. EQ is important, and the way to cultivate this, to nurture this, is spirituality. Practices, disciplines that ground us, practices, disciplines that center us to the center. Again, my appreciation to all of you for being enthusiastic about uniting our consciousness. My appreciation to the organization United Consciousness. Another word for consciousness is spirit or Atma. Next time when we have a conference in person, a conclave in person, I will make sure that I can come. Thank you. Enjoy your evening.